Good day, everyone, and welcome. We are very glad that you're with us today on a very important topic. As we know, the holidays can be full of cheers and full of fun and great memories, but there are times that it can get very difficult and very um, contentious. And so we want to be able to provide some information and some really good resources with our guest speaker today, Dr. Nisbett, who will be speaking on this topic. My name is Shammi Carr. I'm a disability rights advocate here at the Disability Rights Center, and I've got my colleague Don O'Brien with me. You're on mute.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. What we want to do in terms of the presentation today is that we want to give Dr. Nisbett lots of time to present the information, but she is welcome to having questions during the presentation. So please do feel free to put your questions in the chat, or you can just raise your hand and we will unmute you. Also, I want to mention at the end, we will have an evaluation and we appreciate any feedback that you can give us, please. And let me just briefly mention what we do at Disability Rights Center before we start the program. So the Disability Rights Center is an agency that works with people with all disabilities and permanent disabilities. We're also known as a protection and advocacy agency, and there's 57 of us throughout the country and territories. Our purpose is to protect the rights of people with disabilities, especially the most vulnerable ones. We provide information referrals. We provide lay advocacy, short-term assistance, legal advocacy, and long-term assistance. We also do training and we do outreach. So without further ado, I want to give Dr. Nisbett all the time to talk about a very important topic during this holiday season. And we do say holiday because it's not just Christmas. There's plenty of other holidays that are celebrated with other religions, which of course can cause a lot of anxiety if we're dealing with family dynamics. So without further ado, Dr. Nisbett, welcome.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know it's the holiday season and there's so much stuff you guys have to do. Your days and your time is probably so packed, but thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you to the Disability Rights Center for even hosting this workshop and creating such a safe space for this conversation. I understand it can be difficult to talk about certain things during this time because it's supposed to be a time of happiness and cheer and joy, and some things are difficult to talk about and difficult to hear. But when you think about the families that are going through difficulties, it's even more difficult for them to experience it. So right now we're just learning about and talking about these things. For families here in the territory, some of them have not had a period of feeling safe and secure and grounded in maybe 7 years. After the hurricanes, there are so many families that have not yet recovered from all of that. Before the recovery from the hurricanes could even start, COVID came in and threw another wrench in their lives. So a lot of these families, especially the kids, all they know is bracing for the next big event, bracing for the next thing that's going to come and interrupt our lives. A lot of family members had disruptions in their jobs. A lot of kids had disruptions in their school. They went from a safe place being at school to now having to be at home. Some of them, kids, had to become parents because they have to make sure their younger siblings are doing their work, even when they're struggling to do their own work. So they became parentified with little support, little knowledge, little training on how to do that. So over the pandemic, a lot of families were experiencing higher rates of domestic violence and abuse within the household because nobody's there to see them. We had the stay-at-home orders and a lot of people telling us you can't be outside. We're working from home. We're doing school from home. So nobody has eyes on these kids and these families that are going through so much difficulty. And that's why it's so important to discuss these things over the holidays, because for a lot of you guys, school let out yesterday. So now we have 2 to 3 weeks where these kids aren't going to be seen. If there's something going on, there's no safe person that's going to have eyes on them to say, hey, what's going on with you? Where did you get that bruise? Why are you always crying? Why do you look sad? So that's why it's so important to discuss these things over the holidays, because while I might be having a really good time and happy, cheerful holiday, there's a lot of families that's just not their reality. The practice for this is to understand how abuse in the household, specifically here in the territory, can affect children and family. We're also going to explore the link between this type of abuse and depression and anxiety within the family unit. And we're going to also learn different coping strategies that we can use to support these children and these families. So domestic violence, specifically in the Virgin Islands, is shaped by a combination of cultural, social, and economic factors that make it hard to identify and address, particularly challenging. In many Caribbean households, we have the traditional gender roles. We know the roles of the expectations for females, the expectations for males, and that comes with a power imbalance. And these dynamics often place women and children in a vulnerable position. It makes them less likely to be able to speak out against abuse. And when they do so, it's seen as breaking cultural barriers, cultural expectations, and family loyalty. There's also an emphasis on family unity, community reputation, and keeping matters private, which can also always discourage people from seeking help. I highlighted keeping personal matters private because here in the territory, we do that a lot. I hear that a lot. I heard that growing up. What happens in this house stays in this house. Don't be talking about our business out in the streets. So if a child is growing up hearing that, then they're thinking, I don't have a safe place to talk to somebody about what's going on. I don't have an outlet. I don't have a voice. I have to just sit here and take whatever is happening, and I can't take it outside the home. I remember growing up in Tortola, one of my neighbors was being abused by her husband, like every day. Come home, a lot of it was fueled by his alcohol use, and it was just a noise in the community. It was so often that it just became background noise, and nobody from my household did anything because mind your business. This is our household, and that is their household, and they're going to take care of whatever is going on over there, and we're going to worry about what's going on over here. And this was like over 40 years ago when I was a child, and nothing much has changed. There's still this don't talk about our stuff outside the household. And it puts families and it puts kids in a position where they feel like they don't have any safe spaces. Within the Caribbean family, domestic violence manifests, of course, not just physical, but through emotional, psychological, financial control. It includes belittling, threats of abandonment, and withholding financial resources. And that's a way to maintain power over the victim. In addition to everything we just talked about, we have the concept of discipline within our culture. But sometimes the lines can be blurred between corrective measures and abuse. And it makes it difficult for kids to distinguish cultural norms from punishment. And kids that grow up in these environments may not, they're internalize this, and it affects them as they grow up because they see this as the norm. They grow up to become abusers themselves, or they grow up to be in abusive relationships. Okay. So economic instability. We all know that the job market here is not what we would like it to be. It's really difficult for some people to gain and maintain stable jobs, and then also jobs that can help with all the bills that they have. So the economic instability can further exacerbate unrest within the household. The financial stress, in addition to that pressure and tension over the holidays, I need to buy these gifts. I need to get a Christmas tree. The kids need this. They have this Christmas party at school. I have to send this gift. They have this activity over here. Not all families are able to do that. And it creates this additional pressure, and then that pressure sometimes manifests as abuse and unrest within the household. So again, children seeing this and thinking, okay, this is normal, this is life, it's a constant stress, especially having to keep up with the norms and the expectations of the holidays. And then there's a lack of social services and mental health support. There's services available, of course, but to the degree that we would like, it's just not there. So addressing these issues could be a little bit more difficult, especially over the holidays, because the kids aren't at school, so they don't have the luxury of running to a teacher, a guidance counselor, another parent, a friend, or some safe person at the school. They have to go ahead and just deal with this stuff by themselves, and they start internalizing it. And especially if they're younger, they're internalizing all of this, This is going to affect their development as they grow and then the people that they become. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. Can anybody tell me what are some things that you think might worsen family conflict during the holidays? Any specific things that can make it worse during the holidays?
Lack of food and money, and the stresses of not having money.
Okay, yes, exactly. And then, like we just talked about, it's not every family is going to have enough. There's a lot of families that have to sometimes go without. So now when we have the holidays and there's the expectation of doing all of this, of buying the gifts, of having the Christmas tree, of having the celebration, some families just are not able to do that financially because sometimes there's a choice to be made between, am I going to buy this Christmas tree or are we going to keep the lights on? That is the reality for a lot of people. And that's for the parents. So when the parents are stressed out like that, the children, they see it, they feel it, they internalize it. They can't do anything about it because a lot of times they don't even have the words to articulate what they're feeling. Of course, we know the different types of abuse: physical, emotional, and psychological, financial, and then the controlling and isolations. In the red, these are ways that it could affect us directly here in the territory. Again, a lot of it is our cultural norms, our expectations, and so we're affected a little bit differently. All right. Now, if we think about families that maybe the mom's English is not her first language, now she's even more at risk because she can't advocate for herself. A lot of times with the language barrier, how do you communicate to social services the things that you need? How do you speak to people in legal aid to say that this is the thing that I need? And when they're trying, sometimes there could be this misunderstanding, which affects the whole process. Isolation. If the person in the home is being abusive, a non English speaker might not be able to articulate what's going on. They will be isolated from other people that speak their language. So now they have nobody to lean on, nobody to talk to. So a lot of times abusers will isolate them because what other choice do they have? People that don't speak English as their first language, sometimes they have lack of access to resources. And these include things like translation services. And then they always have to depend on the abuser for everything, for translations, for connections, for friendship, all of that stuff, making them feel trapped. Now imagine a child that does speak English and they are the voice of the household. They're witnessing all these things, they're experiencing all these things, and now they're the ones that have to go and talk to these agencies. They're already feeling all this internalized trauma, but they have to get together the strength that they may not have and speak words that they may not even understand and say, this is what our family needs. This is what we're going through. It's really, 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 it can be really, really hard for them because they might not have all of the words. They might not really understand what they're trying to tell the people. If they come to your agency, it's like, okay, they might not just have the words and they might misinterpret what mom or dad, the family member, is saying. And especially if there's abuse in the household, that child has to be the one to report and possibly have their parent go to jail or have one of their parents taken out of the household. That might make them feel like what happens is their fault. And similarly, for people in the household that do not have legal status, they sometimes don't have a voice. They all constantly could be under threat of being reported to immigration. They might feel fear of even talking to law enforcement or seeking medical treatment because they might not have paperwork to do so. They might not understand or know that they have legal rights, that there are agencies out there that will help them regardless of their legal status. Having restricted access to services, again, what if the shelter says you have to be legal to come here? Some services might not be available to them because of their legal status. And again, if they don't have legal status, it affects their finances because there's certain places they just can't work if they don't have papers. They maybe have to work cash jobs, but if there's an abuser in the household, they'll more than likely probably take the money and they have no control about what's happening and they feel like they have no recourse to do anything because they're not legal. So for those of you on the call that might encounter people like this, it's important to let them know and let the broader community know, let me know, let everybody here know what services are available for these family members, because they might feel like they have no options. They're in this by themselves. They might be in a place that they just came to. They're not legally here. They might not speak the language. They might not understand the customs and the cultures, and they can feel really lost. And a lot of times they come here, they come with their kids. The kids feel really lost. Who are they going to reach out to for help? Who are they going to talk to? Who is going to make them feel safe and secure?
Excuse me, Dr. Nisbett, I have a question in the chat. What are the good indicators that there is a possible abuse? And as a mandated reporter, at what time should it be reported?
I will answer that question in a few slides. Prevalence. 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience some type of intimate partner abuse. This increases during the holidays by up to 30%. So imagine knowing what we already know, the people in our community that are already experiencing these things, the families, the kids, 30% higher at a time where it should be happy. It should be about family. It should be about joy, about happiness, about love, about just togetherness. These families just don't have that luxury. They're more likely to experience unrest within the family. In the Caribbean region alone, 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual or intimate partner violence. And then, of course, men are also experience this type of violence. It's not just women only. Men also experience this. So imagine being a child during the holidays that should be happy and about family and laughter and all the happy things, all the good things. And they're experiencing unrest, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, all that. How do you think this is going to affect their view of the world? And then their view of the world during the holidays as an adult. Because if they're experiencing it now, they've probably been experiencing it holiday after holiday after holiday after holiday. So how do you guys think this affects their view of the world and even their view of themselves? This is the actual question.
Okay, someone said they think they'll see no joy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, no joy. And maybe feeling hopeful too. So if you see a kid coming back to school in January and they're just not happy, their demeanor has changed, they're not interacting with their classmates like they used to, they're not that jovial kid that runs in and says hi to the teacher. Or if there's a kid that you encounter in your agency that's usually more outgoing and fun-loving, and you see that diminishing, then you might think, okay, what is going on with this child? Why has the joy been taken away from them? Even family members, if you see a mom that comes to work and she's usually really happy and outgoing, but over time, she's becoming more quiet and more withdrawn and more silent and not just like herself, those are indication that something is probably going on within that family.
Excuse me, Dr. Nisbett, a couple more responses. Someone said definitely will affect their self-esteem. It will affect their outlook, and they will feel unfulfilled and cannot receive good things in life.
Okay, those are really good. I like that last part, feeling unfulfilled and like they can't receive good things. A lot of times they take that further to feel like I don't deserve good things. Because if you're growing up and you feel like nothing good is happening, it's from one tragedy to another, one state of unrest to another, one tragedy, one casualty, one big event to another. They might, again, internalize that and feel like, I don't deserve better than this, obviously. And it's going to affect the person that they become, how they view the world, and how they interact with the world. Short-term effects, fear, anxiety, confusion, guilt, shame. Behavioral effects, if you see some kids starting to be more aggressive than they normally are, being more withdrawn, bedwetting, having nightmares, or if they're sitting in the classroom or sitting somewhere and they just can't concentrate. We might look at that and like, just pay attention. Why aren't you paying attention? Maybe they just are not able to concentrate because of all the things that are happening within the home. Physical effects, frequent headaches, stomach aches, fatigue, and developmental delays. Children in home that have this type of unrest, sometimes they will be so on guard and watchful. It's like they feel you'll look at them and they'll look like they're tense all the time. Like they can't relax. Their shoulders might be up here. They, have a really, really closed posture. They're just not able to relax. For preschool age children, you might witness things like bedwetting if they start sucking their fingers, sucking their thumb, increased crying and whining. They might have difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep. They might show signs of separation anxiety, and that could be really severe. For school age children, like middle school, elementary, and early high school, sometimes they feel guilty or even blame themselves for what's happening within the household. Like if they need a book for school or they need something, but them getting that something affects the family finances to where now maybe they can't pay the light bill or maybe they can't pay another important bill because that child needs something. They might feel like it's their fault. If I didn't need this wouldn't have happened. If I didn't keep asking for things, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And they also would start showing signs through like having constant headaches, having constant stomach aches, asking to go to the nurse all the time, finding ways to like disengage. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go to the nurse. I need to go over here. I need to talk to this teacher. Just always finding ways to just escape. For teenagers that witness this type of unrest in the household, they have a lot of times this behavioral. They engage in risky behaviors. They might start doing some type of drugs or using alcohol. They'll get a lot of times involved with law enforcement, committing crimes. Sometimes they become bullies. And mostly for boys, they become bullies. For girls, usually they become just more withdrawn and depressed.
Excuse me, Dr. Nisbett, you mentioned earlier one of the signs, separation anxiety. Can you explain what that is to the audience?
Yes. So kids that grow up and feel like they don't have love, because when kids, when they're born, they need love, they need embrace, they need to feel like they're loved, they're wanted, that somebody is always there to care for them. A lot of these families here, they don't have that. They've never experienced that. The kids don't know what that means. They don't know what love is. They don't know what, and they're always looking for it. They're always looking for it. If the mom works outside the home, dad works outside the home, the kids not having those constant interaction, it's almost like they're being separated from love, separated from being cared for, even if the parents are right there, because sometimes there's other things happening in the house that prevents them from showing love, showing compassion, showing care. The kids aren't seeing these things. All they're seeing sometimes is anger, being upset, yelling. So connecting the dot between I deserve love and I have love, the kids aren't able to do that.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so long-term effects, PTSD. And I would venture to say that most people on the island have PTSD just because of what we've been through in the last 7 years and not having adequate ways and resources to be able to cope. Having depression and anxiety and substance abuse, usually in adolescents and adults. Other long-term effects are difficulty forming and maintaining healthy relationships because, like we said earlier, feeling unworthy of love and struggling with the idea that I even deserve it. They might feel like I don't deserve somebody to love me because they don't know what it feels like. They've never had that. And then increasing likelihood of becoming victims themselves, victims of future abuses in relationship, or being the abuser. So these children are at greater risk of repeating the cycle because that's what they see, that's what they know, and they repeat the cycle. For example, maybe a boy that sees his mother being abused, he is 10 times more likely to abuse a female partner as an adult. For a girl growing up same way, seeing her mother being abused, she is 6 times more likely to be in an abusive relationship herself. And then outside of the mental health consequences, children who grow up in these environments have higher rates of medical issues such as diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. So it goes way beyond just the mental health aspect. Okay, story time. I have a client that I've been working with for a few years, and she told me it was earlier this year, before the summer, that her son was an A student on a roll. He did a lot of sports in the community, and he just stopped doing his work. Doesn't want to do his work. He's always on his game. He always wants to play. I forgot the name of the video game. Playing video games, or he's on YouTube or TikTok. Doesn't want to engage in school. Doesn't care about academics. Doesn't care about sports. Just want to do the school. She wanted me to talk with him. So when I met with the child, he's about 14 years old. When I met with him, I was like, what's going on? Your mom told me you used to have really good grades and you were so excited about your sports. He tells me that there's abuse in the household and he doesn't care about school because he wants to become rich either on YouTube or on TikTok so he can buy his mother a house and they can leave the household. So mom is seeing it as he's just being disruptive. He's just not being listening. He's being defiant. He just doesn't care about school. He does care about school, but he cares more about his mom. And he knows that dad is not doing the right thing. So he thinks it's his job to provide for mom, to be able to make it big on TikTok and be able to get her a house so they don't have to depend on dad. So us as providers coming in, if we don't know that side of the story, we might look at this kid like maybe he is being defiant. Maybe he just doesn't want to do his work because he wants to be on TikTok. Maybe he just wants to YouTube all day. But the reality was he did care about his academics. But mom's safety was more important to him, that he was willing to throw everything else away to make sure that I could be the adult in this house. I can find some way to provide so my mom no longer has to go through this. But he doesn't have the kind of relationship with his mom that he could tell her that. All right. So, any questions before I move forward?
Yes, I have a question.
Mhm.
Out of curiosity, was that situation resolved? Was the mom able to maybe understand what was going on with her son?
Yes, she was able to. Eventually, they came together and had a conversation about what was going on, and seeing all the things that he had been going through and how he had been feeling and internalizing it and feeling like he had to make a choice. They ended up moving out of that house and moved back in with the client's mom, so his grandma, to get out of that situation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Nisbett, this is Shammi. I had a question about, you mentioned before that, the children tend to internalize it, and then you also have generational trauma. And I know that's been an issue down here as well on a variety of fronts. Um, in that people who victimize end up becoming people who are victim becomes victimizers.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, because I think most people know about a situation that's going on right now where there was, a school personnel who was um, sexually abusing young boys. And
Mm-hmm.
his saying was that, well, I was abused as a young boy. So just trying to get out of that cycle. And I don't know if you have any suggestions related to that.
Mm-hmm. Let me go forward a little bit. So, kids tend to mimic what they see. And if that's all they see and they think, okay, that's what I'm going to be. Because if they have never been in a situation where they feel loved, feel cared for, they're just going to do what they know. So if a child is being sexually assaulted or physically abused, that's all they know. Because a lot of times the sexual abuse or it's not aggressive. It's not usually full on rape as we have learned to know it. That person could have been nice to them. That person, I'm taking care of you, and all the while exploiting them. So maybe that's what they saw as love, and maybe that's how they learn to show love, right? Because even though it's an abuse, we know that, but as a child, they might not have known that because maybe the person is doing stuff for them. Maybe they're buying stuff for them. They're being there for them. Outside of the bad thing that's happening, it's okay. They compartmentalize that. But maybe that's okay because this part of it is good. That might be the only love that they have known. So now they grow up and think, well, that's what it looks like. When I felt good, this is what we were doing. So when I grow up, I'm going to do that. On the other end of that, sometimes it causes them to be really, 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 really mad. So if, let's say, the person is like maybe 10, 12 years old and this is happening to them, that rage that is building up inside of them, it is forming who they are. A lot of times, if you don't have somebody to talk to about this, you can't get this out, you can't process this, you can't understand that this was not your fault. That was just a bad person. You did nothing wrong. If we don't have spaces for them to learn that, then they're like, well, I'll do it to somebody else. They did it to me. Nobody helped me. I'm going to just do it to somebody else. I didn't deserve good things. Why do they deserve good things? So there's so many dynamics there. That's why it's important that we build and strengthen these bonds within the families so that these kids know that I can talk to my parents. I can't talk to my auntie. I can call my cousin. There are safe people in my family. So whenever I'm feeling something or experiencing something that is not right, I know there are people that I can go to and talk to about these things. Because without that, it's just them learning to process it. And as adults, we can't process these things. So imagine a child that don't have the tools. They're going to internalize it. This is going to be shaping who they become. They'll either go one way, they'll either go another way. Both extremes are not good. And then for the whole family, some of the moms in the household may have experienced these things because generationally, we know things that happen here on the island. So if she's experiencing these things, she may have not healed from this. She may still be processing this. Now her daughter is going through it. Mom is stressed, showing signs of anxiety and depression, trying to hold it together. The kids are going to know, no matter how much we try to act like everything is okay, they see it, they feel it. Because mom can't provide emotional support if she don't feel emotionally supported. She can't give what she doesn't have. And she can't have what she never got. So she can't show compassion to her daughter if she doesn't know what compassion looks like. She doesn't know what it feels like. What form does that even come in? I've never seen compassion. How am I going to give it to you? And that's how this unrest within the household continues to be generational, because if mom doesn't heal, she can't show her daughter how to heal. She'll pass it down to her. Not intentionally. This is just how she knows how to cope. And then again, daughter's going to do the same thing. And generationally, we have a lot of people that are just coping in badly, poorly coping through life. Not a lot of living is happening, but there's a lot of coping from minute to minute, from situation to situation, from tragedy to tragedy. But there's not a lot of living that's happening there. Again, why it's important to strengthen those family bonds. It starts with the families. Even though we as agencies, we can help. We're there. But right now, those kids and their family, they're at home. They're at home. We're not there to help them. But if we strengthen the bonds within the family, we wouldn't have to be there all the time because we're not there right now. We don't know what's happening. And we won't see the effects until January when they come back to school. When every holidays are over, everything is back to normal. That's when we'll see the effects.
Excuse me, Dr. Nisbett, there's one question. Someone would like to know how can providers assist?
Okay, so I'll skip forward to that. There you go. Coping skills for the community. Oh, coping skills for the community. Be a safe person. Be a safe person. Again, sometimes we see things and it's not my business. It's not my problem. Somebody comes to your agency, oh, she's been here before. She's been through this before. She's done this before. She's always doing this. Don't do that. Be non-judgmental. Because if somebody is repeating a pattern of behavior, something else is going on. They don't want to do that. That might be all that they know. So be a safe person and make sure that you're providing safe spaces. Where if you're in an agency, make sure your office looks like a safe space for them. Make sure it's inviting and welcoming. Make sure you're not judging them, paying attention to your facial expressions when they're saying certain things to you. And then spreading awareness, doing things like this. I'm so happy that we're doing this workshop today. Doing things like this, attending workshops, hosting workshops, and making sure that you're sharing the resources. If you know of something, there's always new resources that are popping up, whether it's locally or nationally. Make sure that you're sharing those things. And then volunteering at a shelter, making sure that you're in the places that these people are that need help. And if you see something, say something. If you see something, say something. It's not enough to say, that's not my business. It is your business. We are all a part of this community. And just as it's them today, it could be us tomorrow. And I want somebody to say something. Because as a community, this is all we have. We're already small. This is all we have. Um, and then within these agencies for the community, hold the confidentiality. I had a client that, again, in an abusive relationship, and she wanted to, she got out of the house, got out on her own with her kids, but now you went from two incomes to one, and she just couldn't manage with the one income. So she's like, okay, I have to put this man on child support. She goes to the child support office, sitting in the waiting room, and realized that his sister works there. So she left. Before she got back to work, the sister had called her brother, and said, your baby mama was just here. There's no psychological safety in that. Why would she ever go back and ask for help? Why would she go to any other agency and ask for help? And that was her experience. So we have to be safe people, provide safe spaces, be non judgmental, and understand that the psychological safety of these families is very important, because at your agency might be the only place they get that. They might not get that anywhere else in their life. So make sure that you're being a safe space for them. Any other questions?
Okay, someone once would like to know, how do we teach children to recognize a predator or to promote self-advocacy, and to encourage them to report uncomfortable situations if the family bond isn't present?
Okay, well, teaching these kids how to find safe spaces again, how to find adults that are trusting. So whether it's through one of the agencies, whether it's through a club like the Big Brother Big Sister program, through what is it called? They have like some smaller organizations here that do things with the kids, but finding people like those. And then people at your school. Is there a teacher that you can talk to? Is there a nurse that you can talk to? Is there a guidance counselor that you can talk to? But it's more important to have them learn how to use their words. So teaching them how to express themselves, whether it's through journaling, drawing, through storytelling, giving them ways to get their words out and process their emotions. Because we could be the safest people. If they don't know how to say it, there's still a disconnect. So teaching them, if they can't say it out loud, let's do it in an activity. If they can't say it out loud, like, okay, let's try it out. Let's create a story together. Let's just do something that they can use their words. Because a lot of times they feel like they have no voice. So let's find creative ways for them to have a voice and express what's going on with them and being able to seek support. And then teaching them grounding things, teaching them breathing exercises, mindfulness, belly breathing, ways to just manage their anxiety, because their anxiety levels are high. In the family, mom's anxiety levels might be high, dad's might be high, the kids are going to feel it. They respond to what they see. If mom and dad are anxious, kids going to be anxious because they're just responding. They're just mirroring that behavior. So we have to teach them, okay, how to take your deep breaths. Maybe counting backwards from 10, backwards from 5. Just looking out, using your 5 senses. Okay, tell me something you can see. Tell me something you can hear. What is something that you smell? Like using your 5 senses. What is something you could touch without moving? Just stretch out your arms. What can you touch? Just allowing them space and teaching them how to stay grounding. And then learning to give them affirmation words. Okay, I am safe. When they're at school, reminding them that you're safe here. So that at least in that moment, they can relax, they can feel grounded. And also, it's not my fault. Because again, they internalize it. They feel like, if I didn't need shoes, maybe we can eat. If I didn't need books, maybe we would have lights on. This is not your fault. And then, most important, as you're listening, being non judgmental, do not make promises that you cannot keep. I know it's easy to say, it's okay, I got you. If you don't say it. Do not overpromise, because they already have probably a lot of broken promises at home. So if you're going to be the safe person, you can't also be the person that's also breaking promises. Because what they're going to learn is, I can't trust anybody. Everybody's the same. Everybody lies to me. I can't trust. Now we have trust issues. Again, those trust issues lead to the wrong relationships. So if you can't do it, don't promise it. You shouldn't be making promises to kids anyway. You should be helping them to learn how to cope, how to advocate for themselves, how to use their voice, how to stay grounded, how to stay calm, how to report what's going on. But don't make promises to them that you cannot keep because you're making the situation worse. And then for the parents and the caregivers, being able to connect them with support. So again, school let out yesterday. Resources should have went home in the backpack. I don't know if we did that. I'm not in the school, but did resources go out in the backpacks so that parents know, like, hey, something goes down, this is who you call, this is where you go, this is your place, this is your safe space. For caregivers, it's important to create a routine so that kids know they have stability and a sense of security. And then, encouraging physical activity so that it's not just always in the house with this tension, going for a walk together, doing things together, going over to support a friend's house, going over to a family member that's safe, going to the park, going to safe spaces, and then modeling healthy communication. If mom does not know how to communicate well, kid's probably not going to communicate well. She's not knowing how to use her words and articulate what's going on with her and what she needs. Kids aren't going to be able to do that. So it's important for the mom, the parents, and the caregivers to learn these things because kids, they see everything we do. They feel what we're feeling. They're experiencing what we're experiencing. So modeling healthy communication and healthy behaviors is going to be important for them. Okay, I'm looking at the time. All right, so I have two questions. What strategies have you guys seen in your agencies and places that you work to help kids cope? And then again, as a community, what can we do to create safer spaces during the holidays?
Well, this is Dawn again. Well,
Mhm.
as an individual, as a grandmother and so forth, I interact a lot with my granddaughters. And I like that piece that you mentioned about helping them have a voice. And I think it's so important right now for young people to talk about how they feel, what they're feeling, what's going on, because there's so many distractions and a lot of times they really don't feel like there's a safe space.
Mhm.
So if they realize that if nothing else they can control how they feel and sharing how they feel, so I have those conversations with my granddaughters a lot, and let them know if they don't feel comfortable coming to me, there's another family member, but it's always important to have someone you can trust and someone that you can share. And at times they have like a little group of friends where they will, support one another. I think that's really good because young people, they listen, they share, they trust one another. And
Mhm.
and if at any point in time there's something that's, you know, a little challenging going on with one friend, you know, my granddaughter, she will share that with me and ask, well, what should she do? So I think for young people, having a couple of good solid friends, that's really important, who will listen to them and who will sometimes tell them, well, what you're doing might not be a good idea, maybe you should speak to another adult or someone else.
Mhm.
So having that strength in numbers makes a big difference.
Exactly, exactly. And I like how you talked about having those discussions. So now we're going to segue into the Strengthening Bonds book, Strengthening Bonds Within the Families. So there's a workbook that I created, Strengthening Bonds in the Virgin Islands with Families. And it basically is a tool for parents and child. We have two versions. We have mother and daughter, then we have parents and child to help facilitate, because it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, just do this and just do that, but some people just don't know how, and they just need a tool, and not just a tool that they can get from anywhere, but something that is specific to the islands and specific to the things that they're going through and that they're gonna go through. So in the Strengthening Bonds series, we give you practical tools to build that relationship, create that open dialogue. We have a lot of activities that you can do together, a lot of ways that you can just talk and get to learn each other, feel comfortable, and really strengthen that bond. And what I like about this book is that we use what's here in the territory, right? We use what we have. So we use our culture as a way to bond. We use our food as a way to bond and culinary. We use our environment, a lot of things, because not all families can pay to do things. But the beach is here. They maybe can go there. There's parks here that they can access. So I don't know if Shammi can hold up the book. I don't have it with me. Um, so
In
we
our
will be
time.
giving some of them away. Yes, we will be giving some of them away to participants today so that you can start opening that conversation, opening that dialogue, creating that bond and learning. And it's not just for parent and child together, but also maybe the child learns things about themselves. The parent learned things about themselves that they didn't even know. And they get to grow as individuals and grow together as a family unit.
Hey, Dr. Nisbett, there were a couple of comments in the chat. Someone says training and resources for providers and teachers to communicate effectively with youth. And someone mentioned having possibly creating a student workshop as a
Yes.
strategy.
Yes. Okay. Good. I would definitely love to see more student workshops and student and parent together workshops. And I don't know all of the resources locally, so I'll probably let the Shammi talk more about the resources that are available locally.
Sure. So, in terms, and we actually have a new brochure we did with students that talked about a lot of the resources that we have. So, for example, of course, we have adult protective and child protective, a part of human services. So that's something that everybody should have at their fingertips for any type of issues. Um, in terms of disability, we do have a fair amount of therapists who talk to people who have disabilities or maybe acquired a disability, or in this case, particularly dealing with PTSD. Beautiful Dreamers is one of our big ones that we work with as well, not to endorse anybody, but Insight Psychological, Island Therapy Solution. There's a lot of different types of therapeutic settings, both for family and for children, to be able to, kind of work on that, work on those bonds. Um, like I mentioned, we actually have a brochure that we would be happy to share once it's available. It was actually a student-run brochure, peer-to-peer brochure for students who are dealing with mental health, for other students who might be dealing with mental health. So it's a peer-to-peer brochure that will be on our website shortly. And I do want to mention that Disability Rights Center, we do have a parent resource guide that has for children with disabilities. It's specifically just for them. So you're welcome to access that online. We are in the process of updating that, but there's some good information in there about different types of interventions, assessments, therapy, even recreational and youth development. So please take advantage of that resource that we have. And of course, you can always call us directly and for a specific situation, and we can give you some information referrals that way as well. So Dr. Nisbett, I want to pass it to you for some last final parting words.
Thank you guys again for being here, for being interactive, for answering, for asking questions. That we are all we have here. We are all we have. So even when we don't have some of the big resources, we have each other. We know what right looks like. We know what wrong looks like. And we don't want our kids growing up to think that life is just a series of unfortunate events, a series of bad things happening to me. So be a safe person, provide safe spaces. If you see something, say something. And make sure that you're staying up to date with what's going on with the different agencies. I know there's a Family Resource Center, the Disability Rights Agency. I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, so I work mostly with veterans and families. But make sure that you know who the players are in the game, because if you encounter a family member that needs help, it's not enough to say, it's not my business. It is your business. It's all of our business. We are all we have, and we are our biggest advocates. We have to be an ally for every person here. So
Mm-hmm.
just do the right thing and make sure that you are a safe person for these families.